an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up.
All right. Good morning, Jason Kimble. My name is Jesse Berger. I'm the chairman of Harnett County's Republican Party. I appreciate you coming on today as a candidate for District Court 11, Judge Seat 3. I'd like to give you an opportunity as we start off to go ahead and introduce yourself to the county and to the district.
Thank you, my friend. My name is Jason Kimble. I am currently an assistant district attorney for the county of Harnett. And prior to that, I was in Lee County, which is in the same prosecutorial district. I'm currently running for district court judge that not only encompasses Harnett County and Lee County, but also Johnston. So it's a 3-county judicial district. I have been practicing law since 2004, so a little over 17 years. I went to Campbell undergrad, then went to law school at Campbell. Then it was in Bowie's Creek still, thank goodness. And since 1997, I have really not left Bowie's Creek, believe it or not. The Lord blessed me with a beautiful wife who was from Irwin. And I now have 3 lovely children that are in school here in Harnett. I've got a teenager, and then one to soon be teenager, and then one that's fixing to turn 9. So amongst being a practicing attorney and assistant district attorney, I am a full-time father and husband. I am a conservative Christian. I am a member of the Gospel Tabernacle Church that's located in Dunn, North Carolina. Feel free to join us on Sundays and or Wednesdays for good times in worship.
I do appreciate that introduction, and I'd like to get into some questions so that we can
Absolutely.
get to know who you are. I mean, obviously, judges are going to wield a lot of power over individuals' lives, and so I think we have an obligation as the people to get to know who we're putting into those positions. And I think the easiest way to do that is to start off by getting your description of the job that you're seeking and the position that you're seeking. What does it mean to be a district court judge? What will you be doing as a district court judge? As
a district court judge, it's amazing because you don't just get stuck in one area of the law. The district court judges handle everything from, obviously most folks think of criminal cases, but they also handle domestic court cases where all divorces, child custody, things of that nature take place. They also handle civil matters when matters that are $20,000 and less. They try to weed those out in district court so they don't clog up the superior court system. As well as it also involves the juvenile justice. It runs through district court. And as most folks are aware, we've had the new juvenile justice revampment. And so there's been a lot going on in that area of the law. But that's all taken care of in district court, as well as Department of Social Services cases that involve the Child Protective Services and the actual rights of parents to either have or not have their own children. And of course, it also covers domestic violence protective orders. All those matters are handled by a district court judge. So it's a multifaceted job that a district court judge has. As far as one day you might be in criminal court, the next day you might be in child custody court. The following day you could be in domestic violence court. And then like in Harnett on a Friday, you could be either doing juvenile justice or DSS work. So it's a multidisciplinary field, and having had experience in all of those fields would make a perfect candidate. And I can let you know that I've been involved in each and every one of those types of cases in my 17 years, because not only have I been a district attorney or an assistant, I've been a private attorney. I've also been an assistant public defender, as well as been involved in domestic cases, DSS cases, and juvenile justice cases. So I have personally been involved in each and every type of case that a district court judge that might appear in front of that particular judge. And as far as I've had jury experience in superior court And in district court, there are jury trials, but in the civil realm. So having all that experience, I think qualifies me for that particular position, knowing exactly what a district court judge does.
And yeah, obviously, like you said, it's a very broad scope that you're going to be covering as a district court judge. So could you maybe give us some clear examples of things that would be outside of the lane of a district court judge?
Well, typically, and I know this came up not long ago, I believe at one of our meetings, and I probably needed to clarify, but the issue of bond came up for folks charged with criminal offenses, and the issue that the district court judges were setting the bonds too low or too high. Well, initially, at least probably in 90% of the cases, the actual initial bond is set by the magistrate with a schedule that the chief justice or the chief judge, either superior or chief district court judge, whichever one controls that, depending on the agreement between the two chiefs, the magistrate will initially set those bonds in almost every case except domestic violence cases and first-degree murder cases. Then they will leave that initial bond up to the district court judge. So a lot of times the bond that folks might complain about being so low are initially set by a magistrate, but are always reviewed by a district court judge upon their first appearance. So that's one area of the law that kind of folks didn't realize, and I wanted to clarify that to all the folks because there was some confusion at the meeting the other night. But so the magistrate does set a lot of those bonds, but a good district court will always review that bond based on the person's what the charge is, based upon their prior record. And sometimes the magistrate doesn't have that information readily available. And so that could be the reason, but in any event, those are initially set by that. Another area is most felonies, at least we have the privilege in Harnett, Johnston, and Lee County that we can weed out some of the felonies in district court if it's an H or I felony, which are on the low end of the spectrum. But for the most part, most of the felonies, Superior Court has jurisdiction over those. So most of the severe felonies, those will always be resolved in Superior Court, in a district court judge. The only thing that we can do is ensure that a bond is adequate and make sure that that case gets to Superior Court in a fast and efficient manner, so it's not stuck in district court. But as far as most events that occur in life that would cause someone to come to a courtroom, that's district court. It's hustle and bustle. And Superior Court typically is for the more serious matters that take much longer to resolve. But district court cases go through as fast as we can get them through to be efficient to serve the people of Harnett, Johnston, and Lee County.
Well, I appreciate the explanation. And obviously for a lot of folks that are not in this industry, it can seem very foreign and very frightening even. So I do appreciate you taking the time to kind of explain through what the job is. I'd like to transition into another kind of two-part question here. I'm wondering if you can explain to the audience the difference between judicial discretion, which is something that we've discussed in public settings and at meetings, and the difference between judicial discretion and judicial philosophy.
Thank you, Jesse. Well, judicial discretion, and judges have a lot of discretion. I've been in front of judges that go contrary to what the law even is. I mean, and their decision is their decision. So judges do have a lot of discretion. But fortunately, for the most part, I've been in front of judges that use that discretion wisely. As far as, and I can take a criminal case, for instance, they're a drug dealer, someone who has a history of drug dealing and who is now in court for possession or possession with intent to sell or whatever. That person needs to be treated a lot different and a lot more harshly than someone who does not have a long history or a history at all, who just happens to be the victim of this opioid epidemic that we're having. And they have a problem. that person doesn't need to go to jail like the dealer does. That person needs some compassion and needs some structure, some help to hopefully get them to overcome, this opioid epidemic and horrible, horrible addiction that's killing folks left and right. As well as in the, child custody realm. The standard is best interest of the child. Well, sometimes what the two parents are fighting over might not be in the best interest of the child, and it's up to that judge to use their life experiences to make the best decision for that child, not necessarily for that parent or that parent, but for that child. And as a defense attorney and a prosecutor, we always argue to the jury that, use common sense and reason in making those decisions. And that's what a juror is instructed to do. Well, as a district court judge, 9 times out of 10, you are the only juror, unless it's a jury trial. So judicial discretion is extremely important. It's important that it is not abused, but a lot of time that discretion is based on one's life experiences, as well as their understanding of the law. And when you combine that with common sense, most judges will make the right decision. But judges that don't have any familiarity, or folks that don't have any knowledge of some of these areas of the law and choose not to educate themselves, could really cause trouble for some folks by not understanding that and not having practice in those areas. So discretion is extremely important. And sometimes, depending on the statute, it could be interpreted in more than one way. And so that it's important that that judge apply the facts that's before him and uses their discretion to make what everyone would hope would be the right decision, the fair decision. And my platform has always been, since I filed day one in December, was that everybody deserves a fair shake in a courtroom. Their stories need to be heard. They need to be listened to by the judge. And then the judge bases the facts upon the stories that are told to him from either side, applies those facts to the law, and then renders hopefully a decision that is made with good discretion. And I believe the second part of the question was judicial philosophy.
Correct.
And that could be interpreted in many ways. And a lot of time the two are very related, but I think philosophically, that would really depend on how the judge, as they were growing, not only through school, but as they've grown through their practice of law, how they, were trained by other folks, whether they're Christian, non-Christian. There's a lot of different things that could affect one's philosophy. As far as, I'm a Christian. I think that every baby, every what folks would call a fetus, I think that is a living child. That's my philosophy. And as a judge, I would keep it that philosophy. There are many folks out there that cannot have children, and someone should decide to practice in activities that would cause them to get in that situation. There's plenty of folks that would probably be willing to take care of that child and love it as their own. So that would be essentially something that my philosophy personally would be based on. So the two can be rather intertwined, but I think a lot of it has to do the philosophical part, how someone was raised, brought up, and how they went through school, and who their mentors are and their teachers and who they look up to.
And I think that is an area that causes a lot of concern and hesitation for some folks, because there is this ideology that's been permeating through our culture where boys can be girls, girls can be boys, everything is malleable, nothing has definitive definitions anymore. So I guess my question would be, what do you believe that there are clearly defined things, and that everything is, or a lot of things are pretty set, and it's not all malleable based on your own individual feelings in the moment?
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to that particular topic. You were born with what you have. The chromosomes you have, scientifically and anatomically, you're either a male or a female. You can go through whatever cosmetic changes, you want to. You can take whatever pills you want to, but you cannot change science. At least this day and time, as far as I know, you can't change science. And what God made you is what God made you. Should you decide to change his plan, that's up to the individual. But it's kind of, I say, it is, it is what it is. You're either a man or a woman, and there's no, you can choose to be the other, but that still doesn't change the scientific fact that you are, in fact, a man or a woman.
Sure. And, obviously I know some folks would say that, we're not going to see these crazy situations we see on the national stage here in North Carolina, but it wasn't very long ago that we had a big issue with the bathroom bills. And so I believe that it would be foolish for us to not think that these situations are right around the corner.
Well, and we've had issues too, where, it involves someone of the transgender community, that when it came time for them to be sent to prison, everybody was wondering, okay, where do we send them? And to me, that answer is simple. What they were born as, that's the building they go to. But there's been some debate, so it's already getting here. So hopefully folks can make the right decisions based on scientific facts and not what someone believes.
So moving on to some other questions and conversation. Do you believe that we currently have justices that use their position to legislate from the bench?
Absolutely. There are often too many that legislate from the bench instead of doing their job to follow the law as it is written. Probably the biggest example that one can think of would be the Roe v. Wade decision, as well as you can go all the way back to Brown versus Board of Education, because clearly everybody can remember that at one time, at least in the history books, it tells us I was not yet born, but separate but equal was okay. But that is a time that actually legislating from the bench did do a positive thing, because they changed that down the road. But for the most part, judges get themselves in trouble when they legislate from the bench, because it affects not just them, but especially with the Supreme Court of the United States, an entire nation. And so I think it's important that they should look and follow the law. And if something needs to be done, then phone calls and letters need to be sent to Congress and the Senate. Let them do those changes. But the law as it is, it's their job to apply the facts to the law.
Sure. And one of the follow-ups that comes up for me on that is, if there are certain justices that are using their position to swing things to the left and towards their own ideology, while it's, I believe, respectable and commendable that our Republican candidates would say, no, I'm here to rule based on the law, the question becomes, if that's your own peer group, are you not able to counterbalance that? And if the answer is no, I can't be a counterbalance to that, then the follow-up question becomes, well, then how do we provide that counterbalance?
Well, I think we're fortunate, at least in this district, that this not become a huge issue. Whether they be a Democrat judge or a Republican, most of them that I've appeared in front of tend to follow the law. But if it gets to the point where a judge might appear to come out, be out, what we would call out of control and just doing whatever they want, I think it would be our job collectively as a group of judges to, maybe sit down and talk with that particular judge. When we have when they have their weekly meetings. So I think it's important that we would all be aware and keep our eyes open for a situation that would do that. And I would hope that I would not be the only one that would try to, fix a problem if there were one.
Sure. Well, transitioning a little bit into a slightly different section here, but when you make rulings, obviously they're going to impact a lot of people's lives, and it's not going to be just the people in that courtroom. There's going to be family members impacted, and it kind of percolates through the whole community as a whole. One of the concerns that I have is I believe that when people are entrenched in a certain profession, whether it's a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, you end up seeing things from a very narrow bubble. because that's the world that you live in. So what I'm curious about is, what is your perception of rulings' impact on the community writ large?
Absolutely. And that kind of gets back to having experience in almost every facet of law that a district court judge will have in front of them. I've got the unique opportunity to have life experiences and experience in those cases to make good decisions, knowing the impact that they could have on the family. Harnett, Lee, and Johnston, they don't need just a prosecutor on the bench. That's what the district attorney's office is for. They need a district court judge who can be hard and tough on crime, but also who understands that there are folks out there, especially veterans, and I've been involved with veteran treatment court in Harnett County, that there's issues that they face on the battlefield that none of us can understand. And that's the reason we've made that particular court, to assist those veterans that have found themselves in the criminal justice system, to hopefully get them back on track, as well as other specialty courts in some other counties like drug court. They're made for folks with an addiction and not for profit. So it's important that a judge have multifaceted experiences in order to make those decisions that could affect people's lives. You've oftentimes, I've seen children used as the weapon in these custody cases and divorce cases. And, I would hope as a judge, I could put a stop to that, because that is definitely not in the best interest of the child. I've seen too many successful couples go their separate ways, and a child be treated with 100% respect in every decision they've made. And it's been, it's worked out for those families. But I've also seen children that end up going to, they speak out, and they, by their actions, and they get in trouble. They do all kinds of things. In the criminal realm, you're going to have, especially if it's a victim crime, you're going to have a defendant, and their family typically is supportive of them, sometimes not. But then you're going to have the victim and their family, and they've got interest. And so it's important to keep a balance between those two sides, to keep things at least civil. And that's why I've often, one of my phrases is, everyone deserves a fair shake. And in my courtroom, I would be fair and impartial and listen to both sides. So that way, when everyone will walk out of the door, they would realize that, hey, their story got heard, they were listened to. Whether they win, lose, or draw, they at least knew that they got heard and didn't feel like they were cheated.
Sure. And obviously that's very important, I think, for building trust with the courts, because I believe that trust is at an all-time low, based on what I'm seeing. Could you, since you've been a practicing attorney in our area for so long, would you be able to give us maybe one positive and one negative example of how a judge's ruling really had a significant impact on the community?
Yes, especially in the criminal realm, when there's a particular person that's going out there and breaking into anything and everything that they can carry or put in a trailer. It's a good day when you see them get sent away for a while, because you at least know you're going to get to keep your stuff while they're locked up. So, that's a positive thing. And sure, that person has a family that's going to miss them, but a lot of times that's all rooted in some kind of substance abuse. And so the family not only suffers from the actions of that individual, but they also suffer the repercussions from their substance abuse. So, there's a lot of things out there that I wish judges could do as far as for families, but we can only have jurisdiction over the parties involved. So judges can be very positive in that aspect, as far as, the person that has an addiction, putting them on probation on a misdemeanor or maybe a low-level felony, and then making them, or requiring them to go to a rehab facility, and hopefully they come back out in 60, 90, 180 days, sometimes 12 months, looking like a brand new, different person. And that's one of the positives I've seen with Veterans Treatment Court here in Harnett County, is I have seen significant changes in some of those veterans. It's amazing how you can look at their mugshot from when they were arrested to 18 months later when they're standing there in front of you. It's a whole different person. It's amazing. I may or may not have shed a couple tears a couple times, but it's wonderful to be able to see that. And as a judge, it would be is equally wonderful to be able to see that from the bench. As far as the negative side, things are working extremely slow. COVID put us back years. So as a negative, I think things have moved, especially in Harnett and Lee County, a lot slower than in a lot of other jurisdictions and counties. But we were restrained by certain rules and regulations that those counties weren't. So hopefully those will be lifted soon, and that we can get things on the move. So if I had, anything negative to say, is the wheels of justice are extremely slow, and I wish we could make them faster.
And that's a really great segue into this follow-up question. I was going to ask initially, what do you think have been the most effective methods for improving our court procedures and efficiency? But we were just kind of talking about that, and I guess the question that I have is, what do you have to say to the folks that are just your average person making between 25 and 45,000 a year, that have an issue that they feel like needs to be resolved, but they don't have the finances and they don't have the time to pursue action through the court system? What do you think that you could do as a judge to bring them back into the fold of saying, look, our system does work and you should be able to still have faith in it?
Yeah, I think everybody should have access to a courtroom, regardless of funds. I believe that was the intent of our founding fathers. And it seems that the legislature has sought to fill the coffers of the state budget with courthouse funds. So, it's going to be up to us as individuals to hopefully try to fix that. A lot of times these folks are folks that are having to go to court because they've been wronged out of some money. And so after they've already had their money taken from them, they're expected to pay money. So I think everybody should have equal access regardless of funds. Everybody should have a right to be heard regardless of their income. And I know that sometimes folks cannot afford attorneys, but at the same time, if I were on the bench, I'm treating that individual that cannot afford an attorney that's there on their own. I'm going to treat them the same as if the other side shows up and has an attorney. They're going to get their equal opportunity and say. Now that individual does still have to follow the law and certain procedures, but most judges that I have seen will at least somewhat assist them making sure it's done correctly. But I firmly believe everybody needs to have equal access regardless of their pocketbook. That's why I did when I was in private practice, and also when I was in the public defender's office in Fayetteville. Those folks could not afford an attorney, and they were looking at substantial jail time. And so I did that work, treated them just the same, especially when I was in private practice and had folks that were paying me good money for cases. I treated their case the same as I would the person that I got court appointed to, because they deserve a fair shake just because they can't afford an attorney. So I treated them the same whether they had money or not. And I would continue to do so on the bench.
Well, I appreciate the candor and the openness. And in closing, I only have one last question for you, which is if you could just summarize why you want to be a judge and what you hope to accomplish if you're elected.
Absolutely. Well, I think experience matters, and folks need to vote for experience. Having only focused on one area of law, your entire career, I don't think you're qualified to be a district court judge. I think a district court judge has to have been in the trenches and has been involved in at least most of the facets that they would be facing as a judge. Everybody needs to be heard. They need to be listened to fairly and impartially. Like I say, in over 17 years, I've had an opportunity thanks to my Heavenly Father that He's given me the opportunity to do all that. I've got a strong, supportive family that is backing me, and that's a big help. And, having been living in this district, having worked in this district, not only in Harnett, but Lee and Johnston counties, and knowing the people in the district, that goes a long way into becoming a successful district court judge, especially knowing the people that you're dealing with. And I've, like I said, been here since 1997. So I've been here for more than half of my life at this point, being 43, and I've been here 25. So I've considered myself more of a resident of Harnett as far as my entire life than where I was originally born in Winston-Salem. So, experience matters. And that's what I hope people vote for, is experience. And if that's the case, then vote for me, Jason Kimble.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. And just as a closing statement, if you wanted to make any remarks to the county, and also how people can get a hold of you and find more information out about your campaign.
Absolutely. You can go to my Facebook page. It's Kimble for District Court Judge. I also have an email. It's JPKIMBLE, the numbers 1 and 3, and then @gmail.com. And if you see me out and about, feel free to stop me, talk to me. I will be out and about a lot here in the next several days. Early voting begins in 1.5 days. So if you see me, stop me, talk to me. I'll be happy to talk to you. I tell folks, what you see is what you get. The guy that everybody meets is the guy that's going to be on the bench. I encourage everybody to go out and vote, get to know your candidate. And at the same time, I encourage everybody to vote for experience. And that would be me, Jason Kimble.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate your time, and best of luck to you in the primaries.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. I'll see you.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men